show where we talk about the biggest college football games of the weekend. And of course, we just watched the last one this past Monday as Ohio State were crowned national championships in Atlanta in front of 77,000, defeating Notre Dame in a game that started off pretty good. Both teams were in it. Ohio State pulled away. Notre Dame crawled back, had a chance, kind of, towards the end, but Ohio State more than covered the 8.5 point spread and looked like the better team for 80% of the game, we'll say. Um, but first things first, on this show, uh, one of the staple segments of the Weekenders, of course, is Lock of the Week. And so we're going to start off in a celebratory mood for our very own Bobby Howard, who is this year's Lock of the Week champion. We really, I mean, really, like, I'm not even going to, like, it, you did awesome the whole year. You were ahead the entire year. Got close enough at the end to, like, make it a sort of a contest where I was able to put myself in, like, striking distance. But we'll tell you guys who are tuning in. We'll tell you guys about the final lock, which was Bobby had Ohio State straight up. I had the under, which was, like, I think at 45 or 46 and a half. So just to recap what happened, the rules were my pick one, I would have earned 4 points. Bobby's pick losing would have lost him, I think, 4. But winning would have won you 4. So anyway, my pick obviously lost. Bobby's one, he won, and he had was already in the lead, and I was going to let him be the winner, but he bravely picked a pick and wrote it out and was rewarded for it. So congrats to you, my man. Had some great locks this year. Had some really good stuff. I'll never forget. This was a losing one, but you had, like, Missouri not scoring a point, I think, against South Carolina, which was the
under
funniest.
6.5 points. Under 6.5 points, and through 3 quarters, it looked good. Dang it.
So that definitely was like the funniest one, but no, man, super happy for you and your success this year on that. Do you want to give a speech?
Yeah, thank you. I do appreciate it, Maxwell. It was a great season. Had a lot of fun. And I gotta say, if you go back, look at all the picks, you'll see a reoccurring theme, and that is spite,
Yeah,
specifically against the Texas Longhorns. Overall, the Oklahoma Sooners, not a lot to be proud of there, not a lot to hang your hat on, but Texas underachieving in the point spread, that was kind of fun at times. By every metric, successful season for Texas. But if you look back at my record here on the Weekenders, you know, pretty good when fading the Longhorns. So let this be a lesson to you, to you all out there. Anyone watching this, that if you hate your rival hard enough, success will follow. So spite can be a good thing if your rival is bad. So, and Texas wasn't bad; they just were overrated every week. Yeah, there you go. Follow your dreams and hate your enemies.
yeah. I mean, there you go. The hater picks worked, especially you, Bobby. Is it's not just like, oh, I hate Texas. Like, you also kind of, like, are very knowledgeable about, like, their tendencies and, like, the type of team that they are, and the type of team that they have been, especially in the Sarkisian Quinn Ewers era. So, like, it's like the hater picks are sometimes, like, it's like not just emotion. It's like some pretty decent logic behind the emotion as well.
Yeah, it was just the spread being too high in points, and that was kind of
That's
it.
true.
And there were other good picks as well. I just don't remember them quite as much. But yeah, no, it was a good season, and yeah, I don't know. Excellent call from the haters.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, Bobby. The championship game not necessarily going to be like a full breakdown of the X's and O's and everything that happened. I want to get your impression of it, but I just want to say for me, first of all, congrats to Ohio State, whatever, like that has to be said. We've already talked about on this show about we both agree that the 12-team playoff was successful, um, or is successful. I think seeding will change. Maybe more teams are added, but I think this was a great year for the first iteration of the 12-team playoff. Ohio State and Notre Dame are not even in this position without the changes that were made. And congrats to Ohio State, I'll say, for flipping a switch um, after one of the worst losses in program history. Um, that is incredible. That Ohio State's a very talented team. They deserve um, every bit of the glory that they you know are receiving, and they won the game handily. Um, and yeah, I mean, congrats to the Buckeyes. They turned it around. They did what championship teams do, and you know play with the mental toughness in order to um, overcome everything that they the couple of times that they had heartbreak this year. Um, they didn't let it be the end, and they won a very very well fought game.
Yeah, no doubt. And what an incredible coaching performance from Ryan Day, who, look, there's some bozos out there, myself included, who thought that he might have to face the chopping block given that he can't beat Michigan, you know underperforming with all of that talent, all of that. And in previous seasons it would absolutely be called an underperformance. um, but that 4-game run is as tough as you'll ever see in college football. Tennessee, who was feisty, they had the crowd energy going, they had all of the vibes, and then the best team in the country at the time, Oregon, Texas, who had some juice to them, was playing at home, and then Notre Dame. Like that is an unbelievable run. Um, Absolutely worthy champions. Really as deep of a college football team as you'll probably ever see, given how the portal and NIL are working. It's you're seeing less of this depth. This is a team you would probably see a lot of, back in the day with Alabama and all of this. This was a unique squad, and I think they should definitely be appreciated for their resiliency, their like you said, their mental toughness, and just how damn good they were on both sides of the ball. That was a complete football team, and I think it's exciting to see a team, really play to the peak potential that they can play at and replicate it that many times and be pushed, kind of pressed against the wall, with that elimination. Without a doubt, that was the best team in college football. And I think that did the playoff did an excellent job of determining that. And I'm with you too on the whole overall playoff thing. I thought it was a huge success. I don't think we need more teams. I think 12 is great. I think you can tweak the seating a bit, but I think expanding it to 12, having the automatic bids, it makes the sport better. I think it makes the regular season way more interesting for more teams. Like at Arizona State, we wouldn't even think about them. We wouldn't even think about Boise in previous years, Maxwell, but they were massive, important players in all of this, and it's great because we get to see guys like Cam Scatterbo go off, and it just the season matters more to more teams because of it. And yeah, not all 12 can win it, but I mean, like March Madness, think about that. Like the Cinderellas never win it, but they're memorable. Everyone remembers Gordon Hayward and that Butler team. They're went about as far as any and didn't win it. Long Beach or not Long Beach State, Florida Gulf Coast. They made Sweet 16. So
Yeah,
I think to me the playoff works, and it's the college football's the better for it, and I wish we had this a long, long, long time ago.
yeah. I'm glad you mentioned the March Madness aspect of it. Like I literally was like, Jeff Schwartz on Twitter made some like comment about like Oh, I mean, and a lot of people that are naysayers of the expansion were like, oh well, this doesn't mean the little teams are going to win. The same teams are going to win. It's still going to be the Ohio States and the Alabamas and the big schools. And I'm like, well, like college basketball, it's literally the same thing. Like the same teams usually win. It's usually UConn or Duke or North Carolina or Kansas. Like we don't we people don't care. I mean, people care about the end result, and people understand that these blue bloods and these powerhouses are going to win. We no one was surprised that Ohio State was even in this position coming into the playoff bracket. However, the fun of the 12-team playoff comes with knowing that Arizona State would have pulled off a massively crazy upset had they beat Texas. Boise State was a fun team. There's going to be stories that are just fun, and in a playoff, you look at the NFL, like with the Commanders and what Jaden Daniels and the Washington Commanders doing. The Commanders are dumpster fire for years in the NFL. They get a new quarterback, make some changes with ownership, get a new coach, and after a year, they're vying for a Super Bowl bid with one game left against the Eagles. Like under a 14 playoff, like those stories never get told because you don't have enough spots for those teams. And even really good teams who just slip up at one point in their season, there's not room for their story to possibly be told if you don't have more spots. And so, Bobby, I do agree with you. I don't really know that adding more teams is the answer. I think people have thrown that around as a possibility. I don't know if that's necessary. I think 12 is a good number. Um, but I would say like the biggest things they're going to look at are probably going to be seating, and then I've heard a lot of people say like Joe Klatz talked about like we need to have the championship game and everything be earlier in the calendar. Like January 1st should be like the last day of college football. I'm on board with that. Like I'm on board. There's so much happening right now. Like having the college championship be on Martin Luther King Day on a Monday night. NFL, we're in the throes of the NFL playoffs. There's more attention on that. Like if there's a day where college football gets more attention and they decide it's the New Year's weekend or whatever, like sure, like move it up, fix the schedule, make it so that college football is on more of an island when it comes to these playoff games instead of competing with the NFL. I I'm on board for that for sure. Um, and I don't know how you feel about it because you're so much of a football savant. Like people have talked about like there's been back and forth with like moving the Army Navy game or whatever. Like I don't have strong enough feelings about the Army Navy game where I would be upset if they moved it to week 0 and whatever. But like those are the changes that I think are probably going to be tossed around. But I think we're at a good place right now with a 12-team playoff, sans some adjustments.
Yeah, no, I think there are definitely tweaks. Like I agree with you there. But I think the calendar. I think you can make adjustments. Moving it up. Uh, I think would be absolutely necessary because this gets too much into NFL territory. And let's be upfront, it's not going to beat the NFL. Nothing beats the NFL. They're kind of the king of really undisputed champion of American sports. They dominate. They rule the roost. And you know it just doesn't. I feel like it feels anticlimactic and very uncollege football to end the season on a freaking Monday. It just feels like it goes against everything about the sport in terms of the atmospheres, in terms of just you can't get like a watch party together with your friends. It just doesn't. It doesn't deserve to get relegated to, a after work, watch party or like watch. I think that just doesn't work for me. I'm all for having it end, on New Year's. I think if anything, it needs to end on a Saturday. And, maybe what you do is you schedule it for that, NFL, that last week of the NFL where nobody really cares because half of the teams are in, half of the teams are eliminated, all that. Like it's just kind of done. Maybe you do it there. Like, but moving the schedule up, potentially eliminating conference championship games. I'm for that. That's probably unrealistic given that, money all money rules college football, but I think there are some moves you can do. Maybe moving week 1 to where week 0 is now could work. I think any move of Army Navy is not going to pan out, just given that both service academies have schedules, that would make it a little bit jarring, especially for freshmen. I had a really good conversation with my friend Ty about that, who he's Marine, all of that, and was like, yeah, that just wouldn't make any sense. But maybe Army Navy can be with other games. There were already other college football games played on Army Navy Day, anyways, so maybe that's just a fact of it. You play it rivalry week, something like that. But I think you definitely need to start this thing sooner. I think rhythm wise, it helps as well. So um, I I'm with you. I think you can make a couple tweaks. I think also you got to have those on campus games for the second round. I think that is without a doubt the easiest change you can make. It's 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 BS Oregon didn't get a home game and then got blanked. That sucks. I feel for the teams that earned a top 4 seed that didn't get a home game because those home games were awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm even thinking like, I mean, that's who it was kind of where they didn't get a home game. Um, yeah, maybe Army Navy can be like the one college football game that's played on Thanksgiving. I know Thanksgiving, you've got some random college football games that get played like the Egg Bowl and some other stuff, but like maybe that's the fix. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, obviously there's gonna be changes that are made. One quick thing about the championship game I want to take away, and I want to hear your thoughts on this and maybe another takeaway that you have if there's anything that is like burning for you right now. In terms of the game, like I said at the beginning, Ohio State was in control for most of it. But when you look at the way the game sort of played out, I do think that for the entirety of the offseason, Marcus Freeman is probably going to regret opting for a field goal on that drive um, instead of going forward on fourth down. Now, the execution on that drive where they were like, in the red zone on the first 3 plays before it got to that point probably could have been better. I think it seemed like they they were going for, you know, another pass interference call as opposed to like, trying to actually like, you know, draw up a play that would get them the touchdown. Um, but aside from that, on fourth down, I think it was a really bad call to kick the field goal there. I think they should have tried for 7, and then um, because on the next drive, they were able to get the ball back, but the points that they scored didn't really amount to anything, and then you know that was pretty much the end of the game. Especially once Ohio State kicked that field goal to put them up. So that was like the straw that brought the Camels back for me for Notre Dame. I think they'll be kicking themselves about that for a little bit, but other than that, I mean, like there's really nothing you could do. Ohio State was just a buzzsaw. Notre Dame, fought back, but I think that was the biggest takeaway for me was just that field goal call.
Yeah, and I think you do have a good point that it might not have mattered, given that Ohio State was as good as they were, and you kind of saw it on that last drive they had that really kind of provided the knockout blow to the Fighting Irish is, oh yeah, at any point we could just throw it over to Jeremiah Smith. Just you know, 3rd and 11, cool. Let's give him the ball for the first time this half. Just an absolute nuke to him. So, I think maybe it was an illusion of it being close because Ohio State just had that much firepower. But it was an unfortunate decision. Marcus Freeman is excellent at making in-game decisions. That wasn't one of his better ones. Partially, some of it's because of the miss, of course, and not only the miss, but really one of the funniest doinks of all time because it was more like a thud. And I got to ask you, Maxwell. So you were there, and I don't want to ask you about the atmosphere or anything like that. I want to know how loud the doink was in person. Was it loud? Could you hear it from where you were at?
Yeah, it was pretty bad. Like it was pretty obvious. I was just like, dang, and it was not only that the doink was loud, it was just like after that you could hear the air like just come out of the stadium. Like half the stadium was just like so disappointed. The other half was like cheering, obviously. But yeah, that was tough.
Well, if you're a Notre Dame fan too, you're probably bummed out that you're kicking in the first place, and then just add insult to injury, he misses it, just a chippy. If 4th and goal, like that's brutal. But overall, this game wasn't won or lost because of that. It, like you said, Ohio State just had some damn horses. Offensively they were unbelievable. Defensively, outside that one possession, they made Notre Dame's offense. They really one dimensional. Not all the Riley Leonard 4-yard runs in the world couldn't save him. He just couldn't throw the ball down the field, and you got to give credit to the Ohio State defense, which is I think one of the more slept on things. You think of the flash of that offense, which is incredible. But that defense is tough as nails. Jim Knowles, hell of a DC. Love to see him in Norman. I don't know, just hearing some rumors. But no, I think it was an absolute great performance from the Buckeyes, and I mean, just a complete football team. Shout out Quinshon Judkins. What a massive player for them.
Yeah.
And if you're an Ole Miss fan, you got to be sick to your stomach watching that because he might have made the difference in them making the playoff or not making the playoff.
Yeah, I mean, when you have a player like that, like and this kind of goes by the coaching as well, but now, you don't have to play hero ball like if you're Will Howard because you have weapons. And that was the thing that stood out to me too is, you know, Notre Dame really couldn't get anything in the passing game. We knew that would be a difficulty for them, but Ohio State, it was almost like, you know, they didn't have to. Will Howard didn't have to do much because the running game was working so well. He had some runs that for first downs in critical situations. So it wasn't like, yeah, Will Howard would go out and pass to save the day for us. It was just like, okay, do your job, make a couple passes here and there when you need to, run the ball when you need to. Like we're good to go. So that was a great all around um, job for Ohio State, which is obviously what we've been saying the whole show. So I have this big picture question for you, Bobby. Very curious to get your opinion on this as a fan of a team that has been an SEC team now for officially a season. Ohio State national champions, Michigan last year national champions. We're not too far away from Georgia sort of being like a mini dynasty, I guess if you want to call them that. Um, and Georgia was still a very good team this year. Alabama, you know, viable. Texas obviously has been viable. They're going to be there back next year. Um, but I mean, I don't want to be too hyperbolic with in this question, but I'm genuinely curious. Like, has the Big Ten, dare I say, surpassed the SEC in terms of like quality of conference? Are we now living in a reality where everyone's playing catch up to the Big Ten because for the last, it feels like 10, 15 years at least, like the SEC's just been you know head and shoulders above everyone else. But you know, two Big Ten teams, back to back champions. Um, they've added some teams as well along with it as did the SEC. Like, are we looking at Big Ten as the leaders in the clubhouse now?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question because I think on one end, I think the SEC still is a superior conference from a depth perception or perspective. I feel like top to bottom, they're it's a lot tougher to win in that league. But I think it's clear as day that they no longer have that head and shoulders advantage that they had on the Big Ten teams or any other team in college football. And I think a lot of that's due to the portal. You don't have the same depth that you used to have. You can't just stack guys, one through three on the depth chart. That's no longer the case. These Big Ten teams, they have the top ones with like the Ohio States, the Michigan's, Penn States, Oregon, like they can compete for sure. But once you get kind of beyond that, I feel like it's a little bit weak. I think a Vanderbilt could, make some, his head and like a Vanderbilt who's kind of low to mid in the SEC, significantly better than like a Michigan State or whoever else you would have around that middle ground. I think that's where it's a little different. But when you're talking about two teams head to head on the same field, Ohio State, Oregon, all of those teams can beat anybody in the country without a doubt. Um, and they feel just as deep. Uh, their records will be a little bit easier because of a little bit more padding, and I think that's the difference between the conferences in that perspective. But but look, they like you said, they have the two most recent national titles. At the end of the day, yeah, you got to give them the torch just because their best is better than the SEC's best at this moment. Um, we'll see how that shifts. We'll see how that changes. But it definitely feels like they have the edge when it comes to the best of the best at this time. And we'll see. First things first. Next year we get Ohio State, Texas in a rematch. We're gonna have some more crossovers. Michigan goes to Oklahoma, which I get Oklahoma was not great by any means, but um, always interesting to see. So I think there's going to be some. I don't know. I think it's as open as it's ever been in college football, at least the very, very top. And I think that's good for the sport. I think it's exciting for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, at the end of the day, like, we can argue about like which conference is the best or the deepest or whatever all day long, but I prefer there to be at least two conferences that have teams that can compete than just one. Like, that's more interesting to me. Um and like, I think with NIL, with transfer portal, maybe one day, like, there's still one conference that is a little bit better than the others, but like, hopefully with expansion and everything else, maybe we're looking at three conferences that are just really top heavy, and all sort of like able to compete for titles. Like, that's more fun in my opinion. But right now, the Big Ten, a part of that is obviously them expanding, but having they're on more level playing field with the SEC, and so I think that's obviously like a lot more interesting as a college football fan and viewer. Um, all right, well, um, we got to move on to next year because this year's already over. We've seen way too early top 25, way too early whatever for next year. So I wanted to just throw it out there and it might take us a minute to really think about these because it's just sort of like a spur of the moment thing. But Bobby, do you have any way too early predictions for the next college
Um,
football season?
well, here's the thing about college football. I feel like as the sport has changed, way too early predictions have become harder, and predictions in general have become harder because the sport can flip on a dime. I mean, last year, if I told you, yeah, Michigan, who just won the national title, would be a middle tier team, and Washington wouldn't make a bowl, like you would have told me I was crazy. And I feel like with how things can flip on a dime, it's really hard to tell. Um, so I'm gonna make my best educated guesses here. Um, I I don't know. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go Ohio State to repeat the Big Ten. Or I think they'll win the Big Ten for the first time in several years. I think. I mean, it's just I don't. It's blowing my mind trying to think about what next year is gonna be like. Uh, I don't know because I'm trying to think where everyone will be. I don't.
That's the
I
hard
don't know.
part.
Yeah, yeah. Go
That's the
ahead.
that's the hard part too. I will say like not really knowing even like for sure who will be on these teams, coaches included, like is kind of what makes this tough.
Yeah, and it's like when Arch Manning's one of the higher, Heisman candidates. We haven't really seen much of him. Like we've seen like bits at the start of the season, and he'll come in and do the little 4th and 2 run and everything. But we don't know what it's going to be like with him at the helm. Things aren't givens, and I think it's tricky to tell who will be what. I don't feel great about Drew Aller as a Heisman candidate. I don't know. It's truly just the Wild West out there. Um, I don't know. Yeah, and I think that I know that's boring and that's bad podcasting to be like, oh, I don't know, but um, it's it's going to be a fun season. I'm going to go ahead and say this though. I think my bold prediction, and this is, I think Oklahoma makes it work. I think John Mateer and OU find a way to figure out. I think they get like 9 wins. I think they're decent. I think that'll surprise folks. I could be very wrong. I've been very wrong about this team. Just remember how bad my playoff picks were. I had NC State in there. App State was awful in the Sun Belt. So take it with a grain of salt, of course. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. What do you have any? Do you have any particular hot takes? What about your Tar Heels? How do you think Belichick will do year one?
Yeah, so again, I think the roster is still going to form. I think quarterback is going to be the biggest question for UNC, and that is one that I don't know how they're going to figure out. I don't know if they have the answer in house or not. I know Max Johnson. I guess if he's still eligible, maybe, but I think Bill Belichick. Um, I trust his X's and O's a little bit more than what they had with Mac Brown, but I think that's what makes it so hard is like I don't even know who my quarterback is, and if I don't know that, it's hard. I will say that what gives me a little bit of optimism is that UNC's schedule next year is like very, very like manageable. Um, and again, this is kind of without knowing like exactly how teams will be next year, but just like a um, just like a quick glance, if I can pull it up really quick. Also bad podcasting, not knowing like off the top of my head like what the schedule was. I feel like I've seen it, but yeah, I mean, our non-conference our opponents. Oh, let me see. Sorry, I'm trying to find the full schedule. Um, our non-conference opponents are like TCU, UNC Charlotte, Richmond, and UCF. So I mean, if that's any indication of like what UNC will deal with, next year on top of like the ACC, which is not a very good conference as people know. I don't think we would play really anyone. Like our toughest game is going to be Clemson, but that's going to be in Chapel Hill, um, and then at NC State. But I think I don't know the state of that program, but they always give us a lot of issues. So, yeah, I mean, the schedule next year is very favorable. I think if Bill Belichick figures out the roster, um, depending on who the quarterback is, I like UNC's chances to compete in the ACC, and then from a broader scope, like I think Clemson is going to be Clemson, but who knows with Cade Klubnik? Like, is he gonna? He's Cade Klubnik. Like, it's like he doesn't really scare you. If he comes back, I haven't seen news on that yet or not. I don't know if he's still eligible. I'm pretty sure he is, but who
Yes.
knows? It's Cade Klubnik. Like I don't. It doesn't really matter. Um, and then like we know FSU was a disaster this year. Miami, what does life look like for them? Because Cam Ward's going to the NFL. Um, and so Miami's going to have to go back into the portal to figure out who their quarterback is. And then SMU was great this year as well.
Oh wait, no,
Yeah.
Miami has Carson Beck.
Oh right. Oh okay.
Yeah,
Well,
he just kind of slipped in there. It was. I completely forgot about that myself.
yeah. Okay. So never mind what I said about Miami's quarterback situation, but UNC doesn't not have to play them in the regular season, as I said
I don't.
before.
I don't know if I would rather not have a quarterback or have Carson Beck. I think I'd rather take the unknown. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? With all due respect to Mr. Beck.
diversify. Yeah. Well, yeah. Sorry, this UNC tender has gone on too long. But
It's all
my
good.
point is, I think with other roster figured out, I like our schedule. I like our chances next year to compete. I'm excited. We'll see what happens. But on the kind of like to kind of borrow from your way too early prediction, you talked about Oklahoma being able to bounce back. Man, I think USC is going to have a hard year next year. And I don't know. I think Lincoln Riley's future there is going to be in question for sure. It's interesting though. Everyone's talking about Deion Sanders to the Cowboys. Like Lincoln Riley's name is not as shiny as it was a couple years ago before he took the USC job. But like, I mean, I'm surprised there's not more buzz with that because of how things have gone at USC. Like, it seems like if there's any time to jump ship to the NFL, now would be it. I mean, not just with the Cowboys opening, but I mean the Jaguars. You got Trevor Lawrence. I believe I know the Bears job is taken. There's other jobs out there that I feel like Lincoln Riley, man, you got to take a long look at like your future at USC because we talked about the Big Ten and how tough the conference is, but there's the schedule next year. You got to go to Ann Arbor. I'm sorry, excuse me. You play Michigan at home, but still Michigan is going to be a good team. You would think with their quarterback situation next year, you have to go play at Notre Dame. You have to go play at Oregon. Um, so you have to play at Nebraska. Like, not a fun schedule next year, coming off a disappointing season. So
Yeah.
I think Lincoln Riley's job is going to be up for job security is going to be up for debate next year. That's my bold prediction.
I think that's a really solid prediction. I would go as far as to say like I think it's bold because it feels shocking, but I think it makes a lot of sense. Illinois is also a brutal game. You're really easy on the non-conference, with Missouri State and Georgia Southern. We don't count Notre Dame, um, but outside of that, I mean, it's yeah, pretty tough. Your easy road game in the Big Ten is Purdue, and we all know Purdue can get a little weird on West Lafayette. So um, I don't know. I'm with you on that one. I think he's going to have a hell of a time. And I think it's clear that, if he's not even getting interviewed for the Bears job with Caleb Williams at quarterback, things are clearly not going great there. So, um, but then again, NFL teams have surprised us. Cliff Kingsbury got fired at Texas Tech and then got hired by the Cardinals that same offseason. So NFL teams do weird stuff. You never know. Especially Jerry Jones. That dude's a
Yeah.
wild card.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I feel like the Bears and like Ben Johnson was just like such a like, if the Lions, I felt like Ben Johnson was always like who the Bears wanted the most. They wanted the offensive coordinator to go with Caleb Williams, the young quarterback. I think Lincoln Riley, like, again, his reputation has taken a bit of a hit because USC has been a disappointment, you know, relative to their standards. But like when Lincoln was at Oklahoma, people were tying him to the Cowboys job, a few years ago before Mike McCarthy took it. And so now that it's open again, I think it's very interesting. Maybe he doesn't take it, but again, everyone was talking about Dion, and I'm like, man, like if you're Lincoln, you might want to think about hard about kind of putting your name there and going to the NFL because at least with the Cowboys, they have a lot of work cut out for them. But I think I don't know what honestly the better job between the Cowboys and USC is a very difficult thing because I mean both teams are the Cowboys play the NFC East is tough. The Eagles and the Commanders are freaking in the NFC Championship. Those are your division rivals. So you're not going to go to an easy situation from that standpoint. You got to figure out Dak Prescott. You got to figure out, the running game. You need some help offensively. Like Mike McCarthy had some good seasons, and he's gone now. So, and of course you're dealing with Jerry Jones as opposed to USC's boosters and everything. Who I don't know which is easier to deal with, but Jerry Jones is a tough tough son of a gun. So
It is a question of which is more annoying, dealing with Jerry or dealing with, the recruiting trail and NIL. Like
yeah,
either way, you know, that's just tough. That's just
yeah,
tough.
yeah. It's tough for sure. So anyway, who knows? But um, what a great year! What great fun we're gonna have! Or what great fun we have had this year talking college football. We appreciate everyone for tuning in and staying with us um, through this year. It does mean a lot. Every single comment, view, every person that tuned in, and yeah, we'll. Um, I've enjoyed doing it this year with you, Bobby. This has been awesome. Um, we got some bright futures ahead of us and some things for sure coming. So appreciate again everyone watching. It's been fun, Bobby. I had a great year doing this with you, man. Thanks.
Yep. Great time, Maxwell. Good. Always
All right,
good talking college football.
absolutely. We'll see you guys. Take care.